What's My Line? That was a old game show from when I was growing up. I like a lot of it. A lot of it. And one of my favorite programs was a What's My Line episode with a woman who gave her name as Yolanda Reed. A middle-aged, heavy-set lady came on. Okay. And the four panelists were each allowed a guess about what her line was after she came in, and each of them had a look at her, and she signed her name Yolanda Reed. Okay, and one of them guessed, I think Mrs. Reed runs a motel. Another one said, I think Mrs. Reed manufactures butterscotch. A third one said, I think Mrs. Reed runs a reducing parlor. And the fourth one, I think Mrs. Reed manufactures castanets. And the host said, well, all very interesting guesses, but none of them right. And then he said, well, we'll show the audience at home what Mrs. Reed's line is. And then they saw runs a nudist camp. Now, that did give the audience quite a bit to laugh about when people started asking her questions. I remember Steve Allen asking, questions like, would it, would it change me in any way? And she said, yes. Would it possibly change my appearance? And boy, did the audience start laughing uproariously at that. Yes, Steve Allen, being at a nudist camp would change your appearance. Taking your clothes off changes your appearance. And then he asked, would this change be immediately apparent to my friends? Oh, yes. But he has no idea, no clue. And then finally he says, could nearsighted people come to your place? And she said, yes. And would what you do help my eyesight at all? And boy, everybody got a good laugh out of that. It wouldn't help your eyesight, but you might wish it was better. Okay, but anyway, the thing is, it took a while for people to guess, for the panelists to guess, but the audience did really, 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 really laugh through this whole thing. And finally, the way it was finally guessed was, I think it was Arlene Francis said, would this be a seasonal sort of place? And Mrs. Reed said, yes. And the host said, I think winter would pretty much rule it out. And then Arlene said, would the people who come to you be dressed? And then Dorothy Kilgallen gasped and clapped. And all of a sudden, Arlene realized, would the people who come to you not be dressed at all? And then they realized it was a nudist thing. Okay, it actually turned out that the woman's name was Zelda Suplee. It wasn't actually Yolanda Reed. It was Zelda Suplee. And she actually had a limited film career in things about in little films about nudism, which kind of were just there to kind of show young women with their breasts and buttocks exposed. They didn't necessarily show her nude because she was middle-aged and heavy-set, which was out of the, Playboy, the Playboy general thing, although I did read that she in fact posed nude for Playboy in 1963. So I don't know what to make of that. But Zelda Suplee was interested all her life in nudism or naturism, as it's sometimes called, in LGBT rights, and in psychic phenomena. So I guess she was something of an interesting character, an interesting figure. And she certainly made an interesting episode of What's My Line? A very memorable episode of What's My Line? Under the name Yolanda Reed. You might want to look that up on YouTube. It's got quite a few giggles.